Sunday. It's Alysia here, and I'm very excited to be with you once again for our Sunday Global Online Fireside Chat. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you on Wednesday. As you all know, I was sick for the first time in 18 months, but I heard that Darren stepped in and did an absolutely brilliant job. So well done, Darren, and thank you to all of you for your support. Today, we're once again broadcasting out of a very early but magical Silicon Valley. It's great to be back in the pulsating heart of tech entrepreneurship. Once again, our community is at the forefront of my trip, and from what I can see, we're going to do some amazing stuff over the coming weeks. Once again, today, we have an amazing session planned for you. This one is really close to my heart, and given my passion for blockchain, Bitcoin, fintech, and all the cool things around this space, I'm sure it's going to be an invaluable session for all of us. We have a panel of brilliant experts joining us from across the globe, logging in to help you understand the important truths around this space and where it's going to be going in the next 10 to 20 years. I'm here to learn. I'm sure you are too. Now I've got you all excited. Let me go ahead and introduce you to these absolutely awesome people before asking them to introduce themselves to you. So welcome to Shanghai, China-based Scott Pollock, who's a business leader, an executive advisor, mentor, and investor. Welcome back to someone you all know very well by now, Christian Myers, who's an investor, business development specialist, and mentor and advisor. Welcome to Cape Town, South Africa-based Sean Conde, who's a mathematician, technologist, serial entrepreneur, and global connector. Welcome to Tarragona, Spain-based Willem van Rooyen, who's an entrepreneur, technologist, and Bitcoin expert. And welcome to Nevada, USA-based Eduardo Jackson, who's an entrepreneur, author, social media specialist, poker player, and Bitcoin enthusiast. Now, I know you're here to learn from them and you want to meet them, so I'm going to go ahead and ask them to introduce themselves to you. Scott, please say hi to everyone.
Hey, Alysia, and hello to everyone out there. I'm not sure I can speak as quickly as you just did, so I'm going to do my best. Quick intro. Strategy consultant turned internet media and tech business builder, currently focusing much of my attention on advising executives on scaling their businesses. I've been running around Asia since 1999, living in Shanghai, China since 2005. When I moved here, I said that this place was New York on steroids, and today it's even more so. In the Bitcoin space, I'm a strategic advisor to BitMEX, which is a leading global Bitcoin derivatives trading platform. That's a mouthful, I know, but they're really a great company doing terrific things in the space, and I'm helping them with their China strategy. I'll leave it at that.
Welcome, Scott, and everybody knows I was in Shanghai in May. Scott was one of the extraordinary people to host me in Shanghai, so thank you, Scott. Let's say hi to Christian. Christian, please say hi to your community.
Hi, community. Hi, Alysia. Hi, Darren. Hi, co-panelists. My name is Christian Myers. I'm based in San Francisco, California, Silicon Valley. I've spent a lifetime career here building various companies. I helped build 2 companies that went public, Salesforce.com and SuccessFactors. Today, I'm an investor in startups at the very early stages. My focus is on business startups that are helping the business community. I think access to financial technologies brings a level of freedom and is a huge business opportunity. One of my companies that I'm most excited about is involved in developing a payment network for all of Africa. Thank you.
Welcome, Christian. Very excited to have you join us. Sean, do you want to say hi to everyone? He's remaining quiet. Willem, go for it. Please say hi to everyone.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Alysia, for introducing me. I'm originally from South Africa, grew up there, got schooled there, undergrad, but did postgrad in the UK. I moved to Spain around 2011 when I started looking into Bitcoin, as well as part of my interest in esports at the time. When I started mining Bitcoin with the same GPU that I was playing StarCraft 2 with, so it's been a good few years doing that. We did a few mining operations after that, some more successful than others. I worked in some of the fintech startups. Some of you might know a Swedish company called Zafillo, which is a Bitcoin brokerage, still going strong. At the moment, I just do general IT consulting and building European to African remittance technology with a couple of friends. So yeah. That's me.
Welcome,
in a nutshell at the
welcome,
moment.
fellow. We're
Thank you
very
very much.
excited you're joining us. Eduardo, please say hi to everyone.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Eduardo Jackson I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, from Seattle, Washington. I run a startup called Cinema Draft, and it's basically the daily fantasy sports version of the movies. Think like DraftKings, but instead of athletes from teams, you're picking actors from movies, and we track the box office. And I've been interested in Bitcoin, gosh, now for over 4 years, ever since I wrote a short article for Upworthy called "One Man Destroys the Need for Paper Money in a Single Interview." It was a video of Max Kaiser I saw online where he basically was talking about Bitcoin, and I got hooked and have been following it ever since. I have a hobby site called blacksandbitcoin.com, which is focused on helping be more inclusive in the Bitcoin community and getting underrepresented communities more in touch with Bitcoin. I'm also, as a startup is it Christian, Mr. Myers, might need to holler at you about some funding, because I've been looking into ICOs, which are a really exciting space for funding new companies such as mine.
Well done, Eduardo. That's exactly how community works. Hustle all the way. Now, Sean's with us. I'm going to ask him to quickly introduce himself, and then we are going to jump into everyone's favorite part, the questions. So, Sean, say hi to everyone.
Hi, guys. Based in lovely Cape Town. As Alysia said, serial entrepreneur, specifically within emerging markets, which is my focus. Specifically within banking, fintech, if you want to call it that, and enabling African consumers to actually transact in a very short synopsis. To be honest, Bitcoin is not.
Sean, we're coming back to you. We're coming. You're going to share all your perspectives. Bear with us.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, let's do this thing. Okay, just before we jump into our questions, a few shout outs. On the screen are contact details for our panelists. Feel free to reach out to them. I know they want to hear from you, and you want to learn from them. So feel free to contact them and tell them all the cool stuff you're up to. Don't forget to keep sending your questions through to inspire me at onlinefiresidechat.com. And we'll continue to do our best to include them. Given how many of you are joining us today, we have community champions managing the chat room. So if you have a question for one of our guest panelists, feel free to post it and we'll do our best to get it answered. A reminder for all of you, we have community champions and ever-growing meetup groups in over 80 cities and 57 countries around the globe, including in North and South America, the UK, Europe, Africa, the Middle East, India, Asia, and Australia. And I'm not going to go through this because it's getting longer and longer. If you'd like to meet up with one of your local chapters, or you'd like to start your own, feel free to reach out to us via email. We'll do our very best to include you and make sure that you feel you can champion our community in your part of the world. As you all know, thank you to all our volunteer champions from around the globe. You are the heart and soul of our community, and we would not be here today without you. As you all know, we are trying to reach entrepreneurs in 100 countries over the next few months, and we know with all your help, we can make this happen. Thanks again to our growing family of supporters and collaborators from around the developing world for once again hosting sessions today for hundreds of entrepreneurs who don't have access to the necessary bandwidth or understanding of the English language to join our sessions on their own. Thank you to all the presidents, prime ministers, ambassadors, government ministries, UN offices, US Embassy corners, British Council offices, university campuses, schools, business incubators, Chamber of Commerce's, community centers, and community radio stations for all your support and for raising awareness within your regions and communities. Thank you to everyone from our UN Women team for all your support as well. Once again, we're streaming across new live platforms today as a result of all the effort that our champions put in. If you would like us to broadcast from a radio station near you, please tell us so that we can connect and inspire and empower even more entrepreneurs. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for, you want to learn from the best, and they are here to teach you. The topic for today's session is Bitcoin, Ethereum, blockchain tokens, and ICOs, the future of global money flow, and why should we care? I know a lot of our entrepreneurs are very involved in this space and doing some incredible stuff. So when is it better to start learning? But right now, I'm going to pose a question to one of our panelists, and we're going to ask them for their feedback. And then we want all our panelists to share their expert advice. So let's see who we're going to put on the starting block. Sean, this one's for you. Sean, make yourself nice and comfortable because we're giving you a challenging question to start with. Goes as follows. The first question that needs to be asked is what are digital currencies and where do they actually come from? Now's the time to share. Go for it, Sean. Did we lose him? My apologies, everyone. We seem to be losing Sean throughout the session. Scott, do you want to
Apologies,
start?
I'm back.
Sean, please go for it.
Okay, what's the question?
What are digital currencies and where do they come from? Keep it simple, Sean.
Sorry, say it again. Which currencies?
Digital currencies.
So, like, how many hours do you have? You got to go back. Assuming that was Christian laughing. You got to go back to the definition of currency. And inherently, currency was based on some physical asset. Okay, so in the old days, you would have the US dollar, it's based against the gold bullion, and that's how they would issue currency. Then, of course, things happen, governments to start creating currency, with obviously a deficit, and we all know what America's deficit is at the moment. But then the smart guys came along with their Bitcoin and said, well, let's just create our own currency. Bitcoin was smart because it required energy, as one of the other panelists said, you needed to mine them. So you needed to mine them, which required energy, it required computing power, it required everything to actually obtain the Bitcoins, which is obviously now evolving. There's numerous other ones. There's, the name escapes me now, which is no longer using restrictive mining to actually deliver coins. And everyone is essentially just wanting to come up with a crypto. The underlying technology is there, but that's blockchain, which is my passion.
We're going to hear from you today. I know you're very passionate about blockchain. Christian, do you have any thoughts in terms of what Sean's been saying that you'd like to add?
I think one of the things with new technologies is when they start out, people tend to talk about them in technical terms, and that limits their adoption. And another way to think about them is the way Sean described them, which is in terms of what they actually do for people in the world. And he talked about how one of his focuses is enabling consumers in Africa to transact. And an interesting thing about blockchain, which is a description for how digital currencies work, and the actual digital currencies themselves, is they were developed by experts who were very immersed in the technology, but for them to be used, for them to solve the problems in the world that they could solve, we also need to talk about them in conceptual terms. And for me, one of the most fascinating things is bridging the two. And if we're going to use, because currency is fundamental to how societies and economies operate, it's fundamental to freedom. Governments need it just as much as consumers. And if we're going to realize the power of digital currencies, we need to talk about them conceptually. So the question that you originally posed was, where did they come from? And we could answer it in two ways. We could say it's software and it's a network, but that doesn't really tell you what Bitcoin does. As an example of a digital currency, what it does in the world is it functions, like Sean described it, as another currency, except because it's digital, it allows people and organizations to move beyond the barriers that are created by national currencies. And if we think about,
go ahead.
Thank
Let me
you,
just jump in
Christian.
there real quick, if I may. I love what Sean conceptually. I like where Sean started as far as what is money, what is the value of money, because that's kind of how I like to pose it as well to other people. But the simplest way I like to tell neophytes to the area is that Bitcoin is basically PayPal without the banks. It's like, because you're used to sending money digitally, these days through Venmo, PayPal, things like that, and so you're kind of removing removing the middleman to an extent, but it's also part of a larger distributed network where all transactions can be independently verified without having to go through, a middleman that you have to place some amount of trust in. So I like to say it's PayPal without the banks. It's a starting point. Then when you talk about cryptocurrencies and different tokens and what have you, those are all variations or iterations off of the same type of technology.
Thank you, Eduardo. And I know Willem's got some insights he wants to share there. Please go for it, Willem.
Hey, okay, so the phrase digital currency has always been kind of a pet peeve for me because all national fiat currencies are digital. The US dollar is mostly digital. British pound, the euro, they're all digital currencies. Most of them manifest themselves like a couple of % of the total money supply is physical cash, but they're all digital. That is completely separate from cryptographic currencies, which can also be digital in the sense that you need a computer to access them and use them. But yeah, I just want to clear that up from the general sense of difference between digital and cryptographic.
Thank you, Willem. And I think there's a lot of clarification that we need to do during this session because a lot of people are not 100% sure of how everything works. And I know Sean's actually got some insights in terms of this because I know he gets very frustrated when people confuse blockchain and Bitcoin and that. So Sean, jump on in here and share your insights.
I just wanted to carry on what Willem said about even the dollar being digital. There's a general consensus that in the next, call it X many years, that SWIFT and EBACs will actually disappear. And for everyone, so SWIFT and EBACs is essentially how you transfer money internationally. That's the way the banks work. And the consensus is, well, it's going to disappear. And blockchain will actually replace that. So outside of cryptos, just the technology underlying it is going to replace how the banks actually do things. And the second point is, there's a thing that I call, look, Stella calls it an anchor. I call it an endpoint. There's always an endpoint where you need to take that crypto or whatever it is, whatever digital assets, whatever it is, it could be sheep for all I know. And you need to convert it into something physical. And in the Bitcoin world, you need to create that Bitcoin into US dollar, into euro, into naira, Kenyan shillings, etc. So there's always an endpoint where something actually has to happen. And the biggest problem I have with Bitcoin, well, any crypto at the moment, is your liquidity ratios, which is very well stipulated by Visa and MasterCard in terms of the formal banking. And
Sean, we're going to come back to you. Let's just keep it very simple because for a lot of our community members, this is brand new. So we're just going to keep it really simple. For you, it's very simple. For the rest of us who are not world-class experts, it's complicated. So we're definitely going to come back to you on that point. So, Scott, you're in China. You're up to some very, very cool stuff there. I know a very exciting place to be in terms of fintech. In your opinion, given what you see, how a digital currency is going to impact the world as we know it?
Another small question and quick answers, right?
You guys are the best. I get to throw this stuff at you.
Alysia, here's the thing. I mean, China is definitely a big player in the cryptocurrency space, particularly Bitcoin. I mean, the mining operations in China are the largest in the world in terms of hash rate or how much mining is being done here, because this is where the electricity is cheap and the equipment is being produced anyway. But all that said, if you look at the consumers in China, they're not using Bitcoin to buy things. One of the really interesting things here is that mobile payments have become incredibly well penetrated in this marketplace. Consumers, some of the latest statistics, 40% of all consumers here are actually using mobile payments. And this is pretty incredible when you think about Singapore, which is a very advanced country in the same region. It's only 4%. And if you take out the people that aren't even on the internet, so half the country, basically, half of 1.5 billion people are using the internet and are using mobile phones to access the internet. Of those, 90+% are actually using mobile payments to pay for things. It's their first choice when they go into a convenience store and they want to buy something. They're going to use their mobile phone to buy it. So if, again, what does that say about where the world's going? China, first of all, is leading the pack when it comes to that. And, I think what, the panelists from Africa and other, more representative emerging markets, perhaps when it comes to what Bitcoin can do for them or other cryptocurrencies can do for them, this is where they're going to be going. That's what I see.
Thank you, Scott. Fantastic insights being shared from China. Very exciting place to be playing. Eduardo, I know you've got some insights you wanted to add there in terms of what Scott was saying. Please go for it.
Yeah, no, a friend of mine from my Upworthy days, Femi Oke, she runs a show on Al Jazeera English called The Stream, AJ Stream, and she had actually a show this week about Bitcoin and mobile payments. We got into a bit of a Twitter dialogue before it, where she was questioning how utilitarian today Bitcoin is for people, and that's when I brought up M-Pesa, and they talked about that on their show. And M-Pesa is I believe it's in Africa, a mobile payment system which is catching on like wildfire. So that just kind of piggybacks off of off of what I believe it was Scott who said. And also in general, in addition to mobile payments, digital payments, sending stuff directly to your friends and family, Bitcoin and digital currencies, which we now know are all currencies, they have the power to reduce transaction costs drastically as sending money all over the world. And you can do it in minutes for low fees to no fees, and I think that's a game changer.
Thank you, Eduardo. And I know Sean sees this live on the ground. Do you want to share your insights in terms of this, Sean?
You need to define what mobile payments is. I think in first world countries, mobile payments is paying by your phone, got a Visa or a MasterCard connected to it. You can snap it, it goes, thank you payments. Emerging markets, mobile money is about, the M-Pesas, as was mentioned, the Airtel monies, the MTN monies, etc., and about moving money, as you say, so the guys in Africa, they live in, I'm trying to think of a good example, live in Lagos. They need to send money to the village where their family is. They use mobile money. Now, the trick, and the reason I'm mentioning this as an example, is if you start looking at cryptos, and the emerging markets are quite aware of them. It's all fine in a city being able to convert to a crypto. You have the exchanges. Thank you very much. But if you need to convert it in liquidity on the outside of it, when you're moving that money, then that's where the issue becomes.
Thank you, Sean. Willem, you got some insights you want to share there?
Yeah, I do. I mean, from my understanding is the way we call the influx of fiat conversion from fiat to cryptocurrencies, they're done by exchanges, and in the industry we call them gateways. I know you call them endpoints, Sean, but yeah, that's just how companies like Ripple refer to them. Right. From my point of view, how would cryptocurrency change the way global money works? Is that it will absolutely disrupt it. It is far superior to any fiat currency out there at the moment. It just wins by a long shot. It is absolutely disrupting it at the moment, and it will continue to do so until fiat currencies simply disappear.
Thank you, Willem. Okay, now, Sean, we're going to put you on the spot because I know blockchain is your obsession. We're going to ask you in a short and sweet and a concise and simple way as possible to explain to our community what the difference is between blockchain and Bitcoin, that everybody can understand this difference once and for all. So go for it.
Okay, first off, nothing is simple with me. I just want to touch on something that Willem said. Now, in terms of cross-border transfer, the biggest thing with crypto and why the governments are actually so shit scared about it, excuse the French, is A, it's not controllable. And everyone needs to start looking at the interbank licenses and government regulation around it, which is going to be the key step to it. Okay, to go to blockchain, you know what? Blockchain in accounting terms is a glorified ledger. The only difference with the ledger is that Alysia Silberg holds a copy of the ledger, Willem holds a copy, Christian holds a copy, Sean holds a copy. And you validate between each of those ledgers about whether the person transacting can be trusted in order to finalize a transaction. Okay, then the transaction can happen. So as Willem calls it, gateway, anchor, endpoints, let's use the word gateway. That gateway is essentially, in general, responsible for initiating that transaction. So if you took it into normal banking terms, so Bank A, United Bank of Africa, initiates a SWIFT transaction to send money to...
simple, Sean, simple.
Bank.
Keep it simple.
This is as simple as I can keep it. If they initiate, if UBA, United Bank of Africa, initiate a transaction to send money to the Bank of China, they've initiated that transaction by SWIFT or eBanks. Okay, they are liable for that transaction. And what blockchain does is it essentially just builds up all the nodes around it to say, cool, we can trust this transaction.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, Christian, you've got some
Christian,
insights you wanted to share there. Christian, go for it. Then it's Willem's turn, and then it's Scott. Guys, Christian, make it happen.
Well, the thing that I'm learning and that I find interesting about all this is I think about the potential for these technologies in the world is the type of questions that are occurring in this discussion and the behaviors. So one of the interesting things is everyone is struggling a little bit to center on terminology. So what that tells me is this technology that has high potential has a long way to go before it can be used in the world, because for things to be used in the world, well, we need a shorthand to refer to how they work, and that's a common language. So one of the things missing from the world of cryptocurrencies or digital currencies, which is one of the variances in language we're talking about here, is a common language. When that happens, I think we'll see a step up in the use of these technologies. And the other thing is, you were asking Scott and other folks about how these technologies, how digital currency is used in their areas of the world. And what I find interesting is they get used where they need to be used, and they're used to solve hard problems today. They're used for criminal activities, and they're used in countries where it's hard to transact and move money. And most people in the US don't look to other nations for the future, but for me, a way to understand what will eventually happen throughout the world is to see what's happening today in places where these things that are so hard to talk about get used anyways because they deliver a practical utility. That's one of the things I find fascinating about the whole conversation here.
Thank you, Christian. I know Willem's got some insights he also wants to share there. Please go for it, Willem.
Right. So Bitcoin versus blockchain, I don't think you can separate the two technologies. Bitcoin cannot exist without it being a blockchain. I refer to it as the blockchain. It is by far the most secure blockchain on the planet at the moment. It is simply something, a database, like I think Sean mentioned, that builds on itself every 10 minutes. The thing about this database is that it's completely immutable. You cannot change anything that happened to it that was recorded in it in the past. If you try to change it, the other nodes in the network simply reject what your change is, which means it's immutable. It cannot be changed. It is history, and it's set in stone, so to speak. That is blockchain. The blockchain makes Bitcoin. Sorry, Bitcoin invented the blockchain. Bitcoin cannot exist without it. You cannot separate one from the other. So a lot of banks will tell you, we're interested in blockchain technology, we're not interested in Bitcoin. They don't know what they're talking about, in my opinion. It's, they want to create private blockchains. They want to, which is essentially just a private database. But the fact of the matter is, Bitcoin is the blockchain. And there are other blockchains as well. I agree to that. That's fine. But don't try to separate them.
Thank you for those very interesting insights, Willem. On that note, I know Christian touched on it earlier, and I know it's a big concern for many of us. People talk about there being a very dark side to blockchain, to Bitcoin, to the future of this space. In your opinion, how can this type of thing be overcome? Willem, please give us your thoughts.
The dark side.
I know Sean's going to love this one. Willem, go for it.
Are we talking about the dark side of Bitcoin?
The dark side. The whole thing. There's a very dark side, the money laundering component, the funding of terrorism, all this stuff. Willem, give us your thoughts, and of course you want our other panelists' thoughts as well.
Okay, first off, none of these dark things became worse because of Bitcoin being invented. There were drugs before Bitcoin came along. Money was laundered before Bitcoin came along. Porn made our internet what it is today. I'm not saying all dark things are bad things, but what I'm saying is that criminals will always use the most convenient payment system, the most viable payment system that there is to them. And yes, I agree that Bitcoin does, in a sense, facilitate a lot of the new kind of attacks that we are seeing. We're just talking about WannaCry, which the virus that almost took over the world a couple of months ago. It certainly made it interesting, the dark side of it. But I don't think people should think Bitcoin itself is bad simply because it's used for dark things.
I think Bitcoin gets a bad rap.
It does.
Eduardo, just give us a sec. Just give us a sec there. I know Christian's got some insights, and then feel free to go ahead. Thank you, Willem.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say thank you, Willem. I like the philosophical approach you took to answering the question, and building on that, I think the fact that Bitcoin is used to solve difficult problems, which include things that people may or may not categorize as dark, is actually a sign of its potential rather than something that detracts from its value, because if it gets deployed for, let's just say, more commonplace or bright side types of activities, we can see how it can solve difficult problems because it's being used by criminals. So I think it points to its potential.
And I think just because it's so new and digital and not in, there isn't, mass, adoption of it, the way that, cash has been around forever, and things like PayPal have been around for 20 plus years, or maybe something like that, 20 years. So it's been around for a while. There's a lot of, misunderstanding about Bitcoin. People attach a lot of fear to what they don't understand. And, because there are breaches, security breaches, data breaches every day. There's embezzlement going on every day. There's money laundering going on every day. There's a great new series on Netflix called Ozark, which is all about, money laundering, but the traditional instruments of money laundering have been, using cash or different, or, fake businesses or whatever. And just the fact that there are, some fairly high profile, mishaps that happen with Bitcoin, and it's not widely understood, it gets a lot of bad press. I think Bitcoin needs better marketing, in my opinion.
Very interesting insights. Thank you, Eduardo. Just give us a sec, Sean. I know you're going to add some stuff here. Scott, please go for it. Give us your thoughts in terms of China and the state of things.
Okay, well, first of all, I agree with a lot of what was said, and would add that given the fact that there is an immutable ledger that tracks Bitcoin, probably not as good a vehicle for money laundering as just plain old cash, which doesn't have a ledger tracking it at all. But that said, one thing I would also add about, specific to China, although China I'm sure is not alone, is that having KYC and AML, know your customer, anti-money laundering kinds of provisions that the government is requiring, and this is what's happening in China for the exchange of fiat currency into cryptocurrencies, and Bitcoin being the largest of the cryptocurrencies, is not completely incompatible, and that's what's being done here today. So again, any currency can be used for bad. Not sure that the cryptocurrencies are on their face any more viable for that.
Thank you, Scott. And I know Eduardo had some thoughts there in terms of currency controls. Please go ahead, Eduardo.
Oh, well, no. So there's been a lot of Bitcoin activity in general over in China, because from what I understand, and I have not been to China, but from everything I've read, they try to put a cap on how much money you can send out at times. And so people have turned to Bitcoin as a way to send money out, and as well as a store of value. I've heard it's been said that China is a nation of savers, and anyone who's followed currency or stock appreciation this year, obviously Bitcoin is like doubled or tripled. I mean, there's been a lot of interest now in the investment space. Every time there's a run up in the value of Bitcoin as a store of value, and I think now it's only starting to get to be more serious on the institutional level of looking at Bitcoin as a store of value because of the dramatic gains it's had this year.
Thank you, Eduardo. Very, very, very interesting insights coming out of today's session. I know Sean had some insights, but before Sean answers and give us his thoughts, Sean, please keep it simple on behalf of our entire community. So please share your insights with us.
Okay, so I'm going to I was going to say something else, but I'll keep it simple. I'm going to throw back to the rest of the panel. Okay, and what their thinking and beliefs are around smart contracts.
We're going to take this one offline. I'm sure our panelists have some insights in terms of that. The next question goes to Christian. Sean's trying to complicate it. It's too early on Sunday morning, Sean. We will come back to you, Sean. We will come back to you. The question goes for Christian. Christian, you are seeing some very interesting things coming out of Silicon Valley when it comes to some of the most exciting startups in the fintech space. What are your thoughts in terms of Bitcoin, blockchain, fintech, and the state of things in the US?
All right. Well, as far as the startup world goes, there's substantial interest in investing in companies that are working with all the technologies via their various terms we've used here today. So digital currency, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. And investors are actively investing. There's a little bit of realism, because a couple of years ago, there was a burst of activity that led to losses in many cases on investors' part. So I invested in a very promising company that was enabling Bitcoin transactions in situations where it was difficult for consumers to do things like buy airline tickets at the last minute. And a key thing with startups is the technology matters, and we're talking about a powerful technology. The ability to solve problems with it matters if you want to make money as a startup. And we're talking about something that has a lot of potential to make money, but timing also matters. So all the people that are going to use these technologies to conduct transactions have to be comfortable with it, have to have a way to use it. And so I invested in this promising startup, and the world wasn't ready for what they were offering, it turned out. And so I lost a lot of money. And I think there are people like me that are making investments today with more realism. We're focusing more on, not on the power of the technologies and what they can solve, but on the question of, is the world ready to use this? And so there's a more cautious approach to these technologies today.
Thank you, Christian. Now, Sean, I know you got some insights coming out of Africa in terms of people actually using these technologies and the adoption and that. Would you please share them with us?
The difficult one. At the moment, Africa. Okay, sorry, I'm gonna harp on this, which is probably gonna piss everyone off. Everything lands up, as Willem said, I think Willem said it, there's cash at the end of a transaction. So within Bitcoin and blockchain, you need an endpoint. So we don't live in a perfect world where I can go to my local shop, buy some mineral water and pay with Bitcoin. I have to take that Bitcoin, convert it into cash or mobile money, as we talked about earlier, and then pay for it. So there always needs to be a gateway or an exchange where I can actually transfer it. And that's the biggest problem. So if you take the example I mentioned earlier of Visa and MasterCard, you can pretty much go to any shop. Thank you very much. You pull out your Visa card, you pay for it, thank you very much, and the transaction is settled. Okay. When it comes to crypto, how do you settle that transaction? How do you settle it in an everyday world? And that's the biggest problem. So adoption is one problem. And then the shop that you're actually acquiring your goods from now needs to obviously pay their downward suppliers. So if you think of real world examples, so now the downward supplier has to be Bitcoin enabled, and then movers, low transaction fees that was mentioned earlier. But they've got suppliers down the line. So at some point, everything needs to still turn into hard cash at the moment.
Yeah,
Thank you, Sean. Eduardo, please go for it.
I see Willem disagrees with me.
We're coming to that, Sean. Don't worry. That's what we're here today.
Well, real quick, because we have a pretty lively group chat, and I actually want to save this going on the side on Skype. But Willem mentioned how he's married to a Venezuelan, and that brought up a really great point about how anytime there's like currency and or political instability in a country, if there's access to Bitcoin, it's a safeguard for a lot of citizens for the value of their currency, because Bitcoin is traded all over the world, and especially if you're trying to get money out, that can be a really big issue. And every time there's been either a run on the country's banks or something like that, you see a spike in the value of Bitcoin. But also, real quick, because Alysia put in on chat something that I thought was really important as well. She asked, what are the other applications of the blockchain that's outside of financial services? And there are myriad, but one I think is very interesting, which people don't discuss or explore the properties enough of, are things of like voting or identification, personal identification, because as it is a open distributed ledger, where everything's recorded in perpetuity, there's really great applications for things like voting, digital voting and things like that, which would make democracy more efficient.
Thank you, Eduardo. I know this is going to be an ongoing conversation between all of us. So let's hear from Scott. Scott, please go ahead and share your insights on this topic.
Oh God, lobbing back over to me again. Thank you, Alysia. So, the reality is that, as we're talking about all of the different types of applications, certainly the blockchain, and I agree with the last comment that it is very broad. It goes beyond currencies. And then talking about the adoption of cryptocurrencies and what they can enable, bringing it back again to China, what we see here is that it's really about digital payment today, which has been adopted. And there's a few reasons. I mean, this is something that I just want to hit on a little bit of why China has become a leading fintech innovation hub, particularly in the mobile payment space. One reason that everyone knows is obviously scale. I mean, when you have the huge population that you have in China, and it's a population that by and large didn't have credit cards, didn't have, was underbanked, didn't have a lot of the financial instruments that are just commonplace in the West. And then you have these mega platforms. The digital landscape here is different. I mean, you don't have Facebook, it's blocked. You don't have Twitter, it's blocked. But you do have these mega tech companies, Tencent and Alibaba being the two largest ones, that have multiple platforms between them that have 700 million to a billion users, active users. That is the kind of scale on a platform level that allows you to build mobile payment systems that can really take off very, very quickly, and they have. And then you've also got e-commerce here, which has leapfrogged traditional retail in a lot of ways. I mean, China is the largest e-commerce market in the world already, representing about 50% of global e-commerce. So when you put those things together, this is a petri dish, and the upstarts, most of which are being picked up by the 800-pound gorillas, in order to enhance their technology, is fascinating, and there's tremendous opportunity here to see what fintech can be when you apply scale the way that China has it.
Thank you, Scott. It's always so exciting hearing insights from China. It's such a big opportunity. Willem, I know you had some insights you wanted to share, and I think you want to disagree with Sean, so please go ahead.
It's not so much as disagree, but Sean mentioned that there's always a cash involvement when it comes to paying with a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. In that you have to convert the cryptocurrency to cash or from cash first before it's usable in the real world. Yes and no to an extent, but by companies like BitPay kind of sorted that out for the companies, and that they could directly accept the currency, but choose to have fiat deposited to their bank account. That's something that was solved a while ago. But with segregated witness coming into play in the next couple of weeks for Bitcoin will essentially become also not just value storage, but a payment network to rival that of Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal. So, basically we're talking payment channels, Lightning Network payment channels, where you have zero fee microtransactions and instant stuff that's happening. That's coming into play in the next couple of weeks for Bitcoin. So yeah, it's a cool space to watch.
Thank you, Willem. And I know. Hold on, Sean. We're running out of time. Christian has some insights to share. Christian, please go for it. And then we've got an investment-related question for you that we'd like you to answer as well. So, Christian, please go for it.
My pleasure. Real quick, I think for everyone on the call and listening, one of the reasons to pay close attention to Bitcoin relates to what I think Eduardo said about Venezuelan currency, and that's currencies, like any other product, have pros and cons, and we're used to deciding based on those pros and cons what cell phone we buy, what newspaper we read, what coffee we buy. And a really interesting thing is, for most people in the world, we don't have a choice about what currency we buy. And Bitcoin and things like Bitcoin are going to give consumers a choice about what currency they use. And that's a very, very powerful concept if you spend some time thinking about it. And another thing is, I wanted to bring a real life example to what Willem just said, which is he was talking about Bitcoin's potential to replace other payment networks. And that was the exact business that I lost a lot of money on. And the team that built it had actually built a fully functioning payment network and sold it for a tremendous amount of money, I think about $1 billion, to Visa. And they were going to do it with Bitcoin technology. And it looked like the perfect team. But the thing with that business was the timing was off. And so the business failed.
So on that note, as one of our in-house investors today, Christian, what are some of the potential investment opportunities that excite you in the space? And going back to what you just said, are there any potential downfalls that our entrepreneurs and the community should be aware of?
Yep. So I think the best investment opportunity from my perspective, and the one that I've engaged in personally, is to actually own Bitcoin. it's a risky proposition in one sense that you could lose all of your money. The currencies could become worthless. But in another sense, owning a Bitcoin is like owning a piece of the internet before it was fully commercialized. And if you had, say, bought a domain name such as runningshoes.com, it would be worth a lot of money today. And so one of the things I've done is I buy Bitcoins. And I think one of the simplest for me, and I'm not giving investing advice, I'm talking conceptually, one of the simplest and most obvious investing opportunities to consider would be to own Bitcoin, because it's the fundamental piece that we're spending, all these people are spending an hour talking about, and outside this conversation, spending tremendous amounts of time working on. And so that's one investing opportunity. Another, for me, good investment opportunity is a lot of research, a lot of paying attention to where this is getting used today and where it could get used on a wide scale next. And then looking for startups that are working in those areas. I think a huge problem for any startup working on the space is being able to communicate what they're doing simply. To communicate simply, you need to be able to do that to get investors, because not every investor is an expert, and you need that to be able to sell your product, which is ultimately what makes your company successful or not.
Thank you, Christian. And if anybody was paying attention to what Christian was saying, the one word that you have to learn from Christian as far as being a startup founder goes, keep it simple, guys. So keep it simple. We've got Eduardo. Eduardo, please go ahead, share your insights. And then I know Willem's got some insights to share too. Please go ahead, Eduardo.
Well, no, I just definitely want to underscore what Christian said about, I always tell people, in the simplest form, that owning Bitcoin is like owning a piece of the internet back in 1995. Not like AOL or something, but the actual internet. And when I explain it like that, and then also pair it with, it's like, PayPal without the banks, people kind of start to get it, and its potential is fairly limitless. And I'm very excited, now that the networks will be speeded up and everything, the properties and possibilities for a Bitcoin that lie ahead.
Thank you, Eduardo. Willem, you got some insights you wanted to share here. Please go ahead.
Sorry, yes, just a bit of a personal insight. So I bought my first Bitcoins for $1 a piece via PayPal in 2011. And I've done a few ventures in cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin. Some of them were successful, some of them weren't, as you go. But none of them were nearly as successful as simply buying and holding Bitcoin. That's probably a problem of mine, in that my ventures simply weren't as successful as I wanted them to be. But the fact of the matter is, buying and owning Bitcoin is a little bit like winning the lottery in slow motion. So just get some. You don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. You can buy a fraction of a Bitcoin. So that's my take on the matter.
Thank you, Willem. And I know Christian's just going to love what you just said. So everybody pay close attention. These guys know what they're talking about. I know we're running out of time today, but I'm going to do our favorite section now. We're going to go around our panel and ask our panelists as quickly as possible to please tell us what industries excite you and what industries are ripe for disruption in 2017. We are going to ask our VIPs to keep their answers very short, starting with Scott. Scott, what excites you and what industries are ripe for disruption in 2017? Did we lose Scott? Christian, what excites you in 2017 when it comes to the space?
When it comes to this space, I'm interested in looking closer at how governments use digital currencies.
Awesome. Willem, what excites you when it comes to the space in 2017?
Right. I'm going to venture and say esport is going to come out of its nascent state and become, you'll see prize pools, money similar to golfing tournaments. And it will disrupt banking, definitely insurance, the energy market as well. Is one to look out for.
I'm writing this down as you speak. Thank you, Willem. Eduardo, what excites you in the space and what's ripe for disruption?
Well, selfishly, I think it's going to destroy, and already has disrupted traditional funding, especially for startups. As far as venture capital goes, venture capital up through a couple weeks ago has raised $295 million for companies, whereas ICOs, which is basically the fancy way of saying I'm going to create my own Bitcoin-like digital currency built around my business and sell on the open marketplace. ICOs have raised over $327 million up to that similar point. So people just buying into brand new digital currencies and getting in on the exchange markets for them has really disrupted the traditional funding marketplace. Very exciting. Hoping to get some myself.
Thank you, Eduardo. Sean, what excites you in the space? What's ripe for disruption? And keep your answer short. We are running out of time.
Okay, quick one. Just on Eduardo's side, I mean, I view the ICOs as it's an extension of crowdfunding. Very simple, very easy. I see the disruption coming into blockchain, outside of cryptos, into every part of intercontinental government corroboration. Very simple.
Thank you, Sean. Scott, what excites you in the space? What industries are ripe for disruption?
Well, I think, sorry about, by the way, dropping off before. I think that the China firewall finally got me. I think Sean just stole mine. Not just because it is the topic of today, but blockchain more broadly has me very excited. I think there's tremendous disruption across many different industries, and beyond financial, which we were talking about today, and fintech. I see that in industries like real estate and art and anywhere else that a ledger is going to completely disrupt the way the business is being done. That there's tremendous potential, and these are areas that I'm definitely keeping my eye on.
Thank you, Scott. Now we're going to ask each of our experts to prepare a tweet piece of advice that we can all go ahead and apply to our businesses. So while they are doing that, I'm just going to run through our upcoming session. Thank you to everyone for an absolutely amazing session. As you can see, we brought on the best for all of us to learn from, and it's been an absolutely incredible session. We've got some awesome sessions coming up this coming Wednesday. Learn about those tiny business habits that will make your entrepreneurial business even more money. Then we've got how to close that first big deal as an entrepreneur. And then we've got a session called Learning the Art of Finding Investors Who Actually are helpful to your business and your success. Remember to keep us up to date in all your progress and exciting news. We love highlighting your success, and we love hearing from you. You can always find us at Inspire Me at onlinefiresidechat.com. You can also find me as well as our VIP guests and our champions on LinkedIn. And we love hearing from you and hearing that you are succeeding. Now, let me quickly go around our panel and ask each of our experts to give us a tweet piece of advice that we can go and apply. Scott, your tweet piece of advice for this week.
Okay, well, pretty simple. Want to see the future of mobile payments? Come visit China.
That's really good advice.
Nice.
Christian,
Organize a dinner in Macau for us.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Christian. Your tweet piece of advice.
Think about Bitcoin.
Very, very, very good advice. He's been telling me that, guys. Please just go ahead and go and invest in some Bitcoin. Sean?
I'm going to go against Christian and say there are many more opportunities outside of crypto, including within blockchain.
Everybody, I've known this guy for 15 years. He's a complete contrarian. William, please give us your piece of advice.
Right, so my advice is just get some coins, save most of them, and then do enough research to be able to apply the rest to solve even tiny problems in your day-to-day, and then scale that up if you want to create a business out of it.
Awesome. Eduardo, please give us your tweet piece of advice.
Mine's more general, not Bitcoin related, and mine is act like you've been there before. Confidence in yourself and your business will take you places where experience hasn't yet.
I love it. You kept it real. Some inspiring words of advice. Sean, we're running out of time. We can always keep going.
I second that. That's
excellent. Thank you, Sean. Please.
Agreed.
to our entire community, if you enjoyed this session, as you saw, it was a very cheeky session, but a very fascinating session. Feel free to share the invitation with your community and entrepreneurs around the world. As you know, we're trying to get to 100-country goal. I'm going to be inspired by Eduardo's words of advice and say, be grateful for all that you have. Be grateful for the opportunity to be an entrepreneur, to learn from the best, to be supported by people that care about you. We are privileged and we're living in some very exciting times. Thank you again to everyone. Have a truly amazing week. Remember to keep hustling and never, ever, ever give up. I'm going to ask on the count of 3 for our experts to shout bye. 1, 2, 3. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Ciao,
Bye.
Alysia. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.